Hi everyone, my name is Terry Westwell and today we are officially halfway through the year, so I thought it was fitting that we do a reflection on the last 6 reading months. I'm going to be doing the mid-year book tag, answering some bookish questions that relate to my reading journey so far this year, from the very beginning of January all the way up until now, which is the last day of June. We'll go through a series of questions. I thought it'd be nice to discuss some of my favourite books this year, maybe give you some recommendations, and maybe even look into the future a little and get excited about some upcoming books over the next 6 months. I have to say, it feels absolutely crazy that we're already halfway through the year. Perhaps I say this every year, but it just feels like this time it's gone particularly fast. These questions came from a range of places, some of them from other booktubers such as Sarah and Katie. If you haven't seen their mid-year book tags yet, then I'd be very surprised, and I suggest you go do that. I have linked them down in the description. Other questions are just ones that I found online, or I even asked Zach for his thoughts. Before we start, I think it is worth mentioning that to avoid repeating myself too much, I have tried limiting just how many times I have brought up the same book. First, we're going to start with how many books I've read so far this year. So I'm not the fastest reader in the world. Yes, I do read a lot, but I'm not someone who can read hundreds of books in 1 year. So I set my reading goal to 70 books, which I still think is fairly impressive, and of those 70 books I have read 38, which according to Storygraph means I am in fact ahead by 4 books. Some months I'm able to read 9 books, while others I can just about manage with 5. Although I do read a book every week for book club, I don't always get time to read outside of that. Also, I find that it really matters what I'm reading, obviously not just how long the book is, but also how much I obsess or get absorbed by the book. I think I read the second and third book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series in only 2 days, which reading a full entire book in only a day is a rarity for me. Naturally, moving on to my best book so far of 2024, I don't think anyone will be too surprised when I say that it is a romantasy. It will forever and always be my favourite genre, and this year I particularly enjoyed A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I think it was a great mix between an easy-to-read fantasy and still having a lot of complex world building and in-depth characters. It wasn't overly complicated for the sake of it, it was still really gripping, and it even had a little bit of spice. I am often a little hesitant of reading books that are so long, but when you like reading fantasy, it's kind of unavoidable, and it was so worth it. Moving on to how many 5-star reads this year, I think this has only proven to me just how stingy I actually am with giving out my 5 stars. There are quite a lot of books that I've given 4.75 and 4.5 on Storygraph, but I've actually only given 2 books a full 5 stars. The first one obviously being A Shadow in the Ember, but the second one that I rated 5 stars was actually the 3rd book in the same series. Not exactly the most extensive list ever, however, over on Goodreads, there were actually 2 other books not a part of the series that I did rate 5 stars. Mostly just because Goodreads doesn't accept partial star ratings, but that was Bride by Ali Hazelwood and Feral Sins by Suzanne Wright. My favourite romance book this year. I think my favourite romance book is between 2 books that I rated 4.25. The first one is Happy Place by Emily Henry. As a returning fan of the author, Emily Henry is an easy win for me. I like her writing style, her character building, and although it's pretty predictable, like a lot of romance books, it's just so easy to read. The second book was King of Wrath by Anna Huang. Again, another author I'm already very well aware of. I read her Twisted Love series last year and I really enjoyed that. This is the first one in the King of Sin series, and although I haven't read any of the others in the series yet, I do hope that I will get the chance to read some of the others throughout the rest of the year. It was an enemies to lovers, an arranged marriage, which isn't usually a favourite of mine, and not too surprising from an Anna Huang book, it did have some spice. Favourite fantasy book this year? Okay, so we're well aware that my favourite book was a romantasy, so For the sake of not repeating myself, I also really liked God Killer by Hannah Kaner. It's a lot less romance focused and a lot more serious quest based. It's quite surprising that a book with so many POVs could make it so high on my list of favourites this year. I don't usually like multiple POVs, but it was done really well and I actually enjoyed the multiple perspectives. Favourite mystery/thriller book this year? Hands down, my favourite mystery thriller book was Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I was not expecting to enjoy this one nearly as much as I did. It was a little slow to start off with at first, but that ending, I don't think I've been that surprised in an ending in a very long time, and it almost made me want to go back immediately and reread it, and at some point I really do hope that I get the chance to. There'll be certain things that I'll be keeping an eye out for during my annotations. The best series you've read this year? Besides the obvious one, my favourite series was actually something I read really early on in the year. It was my 4th, 5th, and 6th book of the year, and that was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. It's a great YA romantasy. It's fairly simple and probably predictable at times. I just felt like Stephanie Garber was able to create a really beautiful world with characters that are lovable and a storyline that I was fully invested in. I mean, I read all 3 books in a matter of days. Biggest surprise? I think the biggest surprise I had so far this year was The Girl with No Soul by Morgan Owen. This book just so happened to cross my path through recommendations of books that I was already reading at the time. I don't often learn a lot about books before I read them, and this one was no exception. It wasn't exactly a book that I'd heard tons about, but I was delightfully surprised at just how much I enjoyed it. It was a fairly unique concept with magic, memory loss, a treasure hunt, and a romance that you could root for. I was immediately itching to read the next one, but at the time, unfortunately for me, I just had to wait a few months before I could get my hands on it. Did you DNF any books this year? Although it was certainly a close call a few times, my record for not DNFing a book is still fully intact. It's very, very rare that I would DNF a book. However, I can't say that it didn't cross my mind on a number of occasions. Which leads me on to my next question. What was your lowest rated book this year? I have 2 books that I rated 2 stars. I hate to rate a book only 1 star, and I think I'll probably reserve that for books that I don't in fact finish. The first of these 2-star books was A Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I read this one back in January, and for me it was just a brilliant example of a book with multiple POVs that I just could not get along with. I know that one might be quite controversial because it does have quite a lot of fans, but for me, I just wasn't invested in the characters. It felt a little bit all over the place, and the execution just wasn't it. A couple of the characters were admittedly quite cool, but beyond that, I just didn't enjoy flicking between the multiple POVs of characters that just didn't seem remotely connected until the end. The second book was Credence by Penelope Douglas, and although by the end I didn't totally hate the book, there were multiple times throughout where I just didn't think I could continue. I think the only thing I can really say about it is Penelope Douglas took family bonding to a whole level that I did not appreciate. Were there any books that just missed the mark? I feel like this is another really controversial one because it does have a lot of fans, and I think it actually has just had a TV show announced, but that is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. It just wasn't it for me. I just found it way too slow, and if I'm honest, I don't think I even knew what was going on half the time. My brain just did not want to hold on to any of the information. Are there any books that you want to reread this year? Absolutely. With the 3rd book of the Empyrean series, Onyx Storm, coming out in January, I would love to reread Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. It just feels like such a big commitment. I have been putting off a reread of the first one for that reason, so that hopefully I can give them both a reread much closer to the time. Favourite author, debut, or new to you? I feel like that's such a good one because there are so many authors and series that I'm only just reading now for the first time. I mean, there's Jennifer L. Armentrout for one, Stephanie Garber, but for the sake of not repeating myself, I don't think I can call her a favourite author because I've only read the one book, but I really enjoyed Bride by Ali Hazelwood. It was fun and cheesy, and I really hope that we get a second one. This year's favourite indie authors. I do try and support indie authors where I can, but there is one particular one who I will read hands down every time, and that is Tess Waters. She writes amazing romance novels with representation of plus size women. She's just finished her Style Cove 3-part series and has started a mafia romance, so I'm really looking forward to what else she has in store for us readers. Books that made you cry. For this question to even have an answer is a rare occurrence for me because I'm not someone who usually cries at books, but for some reason, A Thousand Boy Kisses really struck a nerve with me. I didn't exactly go into it with the highest hopes, and it wasn't exactly the most amazing piece of literature I've ever read. It was so easy to read, I just found myself getting really absorbed into it, which is probably why it made me cry. A book that made you happy. Okay, so if you have read this book, then my answer to this question may seem a little peculiar, but Afterlove by Tanya Byrne. I don't want to give anything away to people who might want to go and read it, but it for sure had its sad moments. I was just really happy with how it ended. I just thought it was a really nice ending. I don't know, I think it brought out some conflicting emotions in me. The most beautiful book purchase or gift this year. I have purchased some absolutely stunning books. However, I'm not someone who has a lot of books with stenciled edges, and because of how much I love it and because of how beautiful it is, it has to be The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. I have spoke a lot about this book recently because I did it as a part of Panic at the Book Club, so you're all probably fed up with me talking about it, but just look how beautiful that lighthouse is. New releases you haven't read this year but want to. I feel like I only put this question in to annoy myself again. In March, I read the previously mentioned The Girl with No Soul by Morgan Owen, and I was immediately itching to read the next one. However, unfortunately for me, it wasn't out yet. It has since been published, and I have got my copy of The Boy with the Haunted Heart. I think it came out in May. I just have not had the time to read it. I keep taking my Kindle everywhere in the hopes that I'll just get a moment to read a chapter or two, but I just haven't. Hopefully July will be the moment for this book to shine. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Okay, so there's obviously a ton of books that I am really looking forward to and I will read when they come out, but there are only 2 books that I'm this excited for. To nobody's surprise, one of them is the 4th installment of the Flesh and Fire series, Born of Blood and Ash. The next one is, of course, Reckless, which is the second book in the Powerless trilogy, which I will be reading very soon. I can't wait to find out what happens next, and after reading Powerful in April, I swear it only made me more impatient for the release date. Pre-ordered books. I don't think I've actually pre-ordered that many books, apart from the 2 that I've just mentioned. I know that I pre-ordered Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. That is the Caraval series holiday novella. I think that's due to come out sometime in October. This one doesn't technically come out this year, but I also managed to pre-order the Waterstones exclusive edition of Onyx Storm, which I'm very excited for. I just so happened to stumble across it and immediately ordered it on the Waterstones app, and I swear 2 hours later it was sold out. 5-star predictions for the rest of the year. I have really high hopes for When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I loved Fourth Wing, and I've been really enjoying Throne of Glass series, so I'm hoping for something in that sort of ballpark. I've heard some really great things about it, so I'm just hoping that it's going to live up to the hype. How has Panic at the Book Club been so far this year? At the beginning of the year, I had 27 subscribers on YouTube, and personally for me, it's not all about that number. It's not about how many followers I have on whatever social media, but it is the first question that people ask when they find out that I post my book club content. Sometimes it can feel like that number doesn't change all that much as well, so it feels like it's going quite slow. But I now have nearly 100 subscribers on YouTube, and I have over 1,500 followers on TikTok, which I am super proud of myself for. There may be less people in my personal life who join in on my book club episodes, however, I find it tremendously rewarding when I meet new people or even when total strangers want to join in, because that's why I did this in the first place, so that I could meet new people and so that everyone, new and those in my personal life, could join in. Panic at the Book Club goals of the year. If my partner is watching this, then obviously my number one top priority is getting married next month in August. I still have tons of planning and organisation and prep to do, but it should be fun, it should be beautiful, and everything else can just wait until after that. When it comes to book club itself, I'm just super proud of pushing myself, learning more and more every week, and simply just continuing with it. I don't have any particular goals set. I just want to continue doing what I'm doing, getting better at it, and hopefully meeting some new people along the way. So that's probably enough of me talking for one day. If you did like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It is always appreciated. I believe only like 4% of my viewers are actually subscribed, so if you could do that, that would be great. Anyway, I will see you every week for book club. Bye.